Ladies and gentlemen, this is Cadet Jonathan Trout. Myself, along with both Cadet Parker and Cadet Weigel, we will be covering the system and the proposed solution of the refugee radicalization crisis within the UCOM AO.
So I'm going to provide a bit of overview of what the problem actually is here. So over the past decade, the number of refugees has increased dramatically, as you can see from this graph. So in 2007, there were just over 40 million refugees, and now that number is almost at 70 million. This is a problem because not all of these refugees can be screened. Additionally, some of these are asylum seekers, so those can be treated differently than the actual refugees. Asylum seekers tend to be integrated into the population more, whereas refugees are kept in camps such as the ones in Jordan and in Turkey. So speaking of these other countries, this is an overview of EUCOM's AOR. Now all the countries that are in the darker gray color is what EUCOM is actually responsible for. In looking at the path that refugees actually take, is they tend to come from Middle Eastern countries such as Afghanistan and Iraq. And they will flee either through Turkey into the central of Europe, or they will cross the Mediterranean into Greece. Now, as these people are crossing, we've noticed an increase in the number of terrorist attacks in France and in Germany, which are part of the EUCOM AOR, which is indicating that there are radical refugees who are coming with these groups. And one of the problems that EUCOM is having is figuring out where these are and what to do about them. So the overall problem that EUCOM needs to solve in order to fix this problem is that EUCOM needs to reduce refugee radicalization in order to provide security within their AOR. This is going to reduce those terrorist attacks I was talking about earlier. In addition, it's going to provide security for the systems that are under their responsibility. This is also going to provide the European nations within the AOR with a sense of positivity and hope that is currently missing since these refugees have started coming in. So looking at a redefined problem statement is that EUCOM needs to develop an immigration policy that's going to deny radicals while allowing an education and faster assimilation of the refugees in order to decrease the amount of refugee radicalization in Europe. So to come up with this redefined problem statement, we looked at the factors that are affecting radicalization, including education and assimilation into the communities. If we fix these two problems, then refugees are going to be less likely to become radicals because they're going to feel like they belong to the communities that they are now part of.
Okay, so the overall objective of the qualitative value model is for the EUCOM to help with refugee radicalization in the crisis in that area. And so our fundamental objective is to decrease the number of terrorist attacks and activity in the AOR. And so from there we branch down into our functions, and so our functions include increased financial stability, increased quality of life, and to maximize living conditions. And so once we have established the functions underneath the fundamental objective, then we go down to the objectives that we want to have in order to accomplish the functions. And so for our first objective that is tied to increasing financial stability, we have to maximize the income. And then for increased quality of life, we have to maximize the opportunities that the refugees have. And then finally, for maximizing, for the objective is maximizing living conditions, which is also connected to the increased quality of life function. And so once we have established our functions, our objectives, then we move on to our value measures. And for increasing the financial stability, our value measure that we will take to be able to apply a numerical value to will be the annual wage, which includes the stipends and jobs. And then for the increased quality of life, our objectives include the percent of refugee pursuing citizenship, along with the percent of refugees that are in schools. And then under our objective of maximizing living conditions, which is connected to the increased quality of life, we have the percent of refugees living in permanent residences. So under convergent thinking, we used a morphological box to create our candidate solutions. And our candidate solutions are based off of our three objectives, which is financial aid, opportunity, and housing. So under financial aid, we decided that three candidate solutions would be $50 stipend per week, $100 stipend per week, and then $200 stipend per week. And then under opportunity, we go into free education, government-provided jobs, and pathway to citizens. And then under our third objective, under housing, we have camps, rental houses, and temporary housing. And combining all 9 candidate solutions into 27 different alternate solutions, which then we will then screen along our convergent thinking route. Then we move into divergent thinking, and in divergent thinking, we have to go through and think about and screen our different candidate solutions. And so, when looking through our candidate solutions, we want to think: is it logically inconsistent? And logically inconsistent is when a candidate solution just is not feasible, does not make sense. And then empirically inconsistent is based off of cost and money, and if that is not absolutely feasible to the stakeholders and to the EUCOM when they're trying to provide these candidate solutions, then we also have to cross them off the board. And finally, we have normatively inconsistent, and this has to do mostly with politics. And based off of these three, we screened our 27 candidate solutions, and came out with our 5 enhanced solutions.
Lastly, we are looking at our solution values. The solution value is the overall score that each individual candidate solution received for each category, summed up into one final total value. So the candidate solution that had the highest total value score was Yellowstone with a score of 65.7, and then followed by that, Arches, Great Smoky Mountains, and Yosemite were all relatively around the same area with within 58 to 59, and then in the back was Acadia with a score of 50. Now we are looking at the cost analysis of each candidate solution. So here in this this chart, it breaks down each individual candidate solution with the total cost that it would be for a 3-year period. So first you have Acadia right around 60,000, then Arches is a little over 20,000, followed by Great Smoky Mountains, which is in the 50,000 range, then Yellowstone, which is up past 180,000, which is the outlier of the group, and then Yosemite right around 17,000. Just wanted to point out the reason that Yellowstone is the highest is because this is the only candidate solution that has government provided jobs. So we dictated that the job itself would be a direct cost to the governments within the UCOM AO. So the different types of costs we're looking at variable costs, recurring costs, a bunch of different forms of costs. So we use that all within our individual cost analysis. So we looked at things from startup fees to like for the stipends, we looked at the weekly amount that each refugee would receive. And so this is all based off of parametric cost analysis. So we looked at various similar situations and used those to apply those values to our cost analysis.
Okay, so our proposed solution was Yosemite, which the features include the $100 stipend, the pathway to citizenship, and temporary housing. And so under our qualitative value model, or quantitative value model, Yosemite had a score of 58.44, which was our second highest score in our value model. But then we look at our cost analysis of the candidate solution of Yosemite, and it was $17,315. So it has the second highest value, but the best cost analysis. And so based on these two factors which we applied during our creation and solution design of our system, we believe that the solution of Yosemite would be the best to be in place and fulfilled by the EUCOM commander.
In terms of documentation, all individual sources that were used to create this presentation, create this system, can be found here at this Google Doc.